So,
Yeah, you sure are. Okay. I think that's you. Okay, let's get going. So first of all, I want to welcome everybody to our DFW chapter P&G alum session and webinar. And I am particularly pleased to bring in my very good friend and former colleague, Jeremy Cage. And Jeremy and I overlapped at Procter Gamble. We didn't actually know each other at P&G, but then we worked very closely together at PepsiCo for many years. He was more on the marketing side. I was definitely on the R&D side. And I don't know if you're ever located in the same place. He was in Mexico when I was in Dallas, then he was in New York, but I digress. Anyway, Jeremy is just a phenomenal individual, human, and was always very, I would say, really lived into thinking outside the box while he, at least when I knew him at PepsiCo, was responsible for tremendous growth on the products that he was associated with. But more than that, he always kept a great perspective about, okay, work is work, but there's more to life than just work. And that's, I think, part of what he's going to talk about.
Yeah.
He used to talk about sailing around the world, but a lot of people talk about it. Jeremy doesn't just talk, he does it, and wrote a fantastic book sort of blending the two, but I won't steal his thunder. And we're going to get into it just a second. Just a couple of quick slides on propaganda. So this is a series that the P&G Alumni Network of DFW is sponsoring. And we've had several to date. The idea was to do these in person about the same week that COVID started locking everything down. So we decided to go virtual, and the beauty of that is we can share it to more than just the DFW chapter of the P&G alum. Even some outside P&Gers are invited, and of course they're very welcome. So like I said, it's a series, and just a little bit about the DFW chapter of our P&G Alum Society. Ranu, who is, at least on my upper left on the screen, is our chair and president. Then myself, Carlos Barroso, board member, Graciela Monteagudo, who's about to move to Miami, but we'll make her our honorary DFW chapter member, Roberta Duque, Stephanie Webaum, who I definitely saw on the screen, Bernardo Mesa, and Alan Snyder. And if you are anywhere in the vicinity of DFW, we would very much welcome you to join our chapter. And we hope to start meeting in person sooner rather than later. Like I said, we only started a little over a year ago, just as COVID hit. So timing was just really on the mark. But we've been, like I said, been able to enjoy these webinars. So I'm going to go back to my introductory screen. And it is my pleasure to turn it over to Jeremy. And we will have time before the hour to ask questions, because I'm sure you're going to have questions, whether it's about sailing or work or anything else. Jeremy will definitely have an answer and an opinion. So with that, my pleasure to turn it over to Jeremy Cage.
Well, thank you very much, Carlos. Let's just switch out here, and we'll get a screen share going. And so just confirmation, can everybody see this? Okay, great. So one of the questions that I have just to kind of kick this off is, what do you guys think that all of these things have in common? You know, you've got the United States of America, you got Amazon, you got this little baby, you got an older couple, and you got Michael Phelps. And in that we're not face to face, I'm going to go ahead and give you the answers. You know, what they all have in common is they all started as a dream. So the United States started as a dream, as a country with freedom and liberty and justice for everybody, not just a select few, which was a radical idea at the time, and actually I think still is a radical idea. Amazon started as a dream to transform the way the world reads, and subsequently how the world shops, and obviously that's been transformational in our recent lifetime. This baby represents the dream of a family, of new life. This older couple represent the dream of a long, happy life with a partner. And Michael Phelps, you know, he was able to achieve what he achieved because of his dream to become the most decorated Olympian of all time. So that brings me to a foundational premise number one, if you will, which is that I actually think that dreams are the most powerful force on the planet. They're much more powerful than the waves crashing against the coastline of the Galapagos, which is a picture that I took here. So that's if you think about it, every country, every brand, every service, every company, every relationship, every one of you all started as a dream. And so I wrote this book because I actually don't think that we spend enough time on such an important topic. So that's foundational premise number one. I think dreams are the most powerful force on the planet. A second, and Carlos alluded to this, a second foundational belief that I have is that there's no such thing as work-life balance. I think that's a gross oversimplification of us as human beings. I think it presupposes that there's this thing called work, there's this thing called life, and and they're sort of in balance. And when they're out of balance, of course, everything falls out of whack. So I actually think a more appropriate description is life balance, of which, of course, work is a part. And I like to think of this as my lifeboat. And I think that, so I don't think it's just work and life. Work and life. I think of, if you think about a lifeboat, if you throw everything into a lifeboat, well, then the lifeboat's going to sink. So you need to choose what goes into a lifeboat. You need to choose what's your grab bags. What are the most important things that go into a lifeboat, not just to enable you to survive, but also to thrive, frankly. And for me, just to give you a little bit of perspective, I think there are about 7 big grab bags in my life. So there's my family, friends, my work and financials, my philanthropy is important to me, my fitness, my faith. And so those are the important grab bags in my life. And the question that I have for you is, and you might want to jot this down, because I think this is all good thought-provoking stuff for after the session, is what are the most important grab bags in your lifeboat? And I think that hang on, sorry, just a second. I'm just having a quick there we go. Sorry, in your lifeboat. And I actually think that each of those, if you will, grab bags in your lifeboat deserves its own dreams, right? So we had a dream, as Carlos mentioned, and our dream was to sail around the world. And we did it. And so just to take you on a little bit of a fun journey, because everyone's been all cooped up in COVID land. So what we did is we built a catamaran in South Africa. And then we set sail. We took the kids out of school for 1 school year and 2 summer vacations, so about 18 months in total. And we started in the Mediterranean. So we did a big loop of the Mediterranean, going as far east as Egypt and the Suez Canal, and then we looped back around. And then when we were done with the Mediterranean, which was amazing, it was a really good start to the trip. We then went down the northeast coast of Africa, down to the Canary Islands, across the Atlantic to the Caribbean, and then we sailed all the way through the Caribbean to and through the Panama Canal. So you can see this is our family in the bottom center here, going through the Panama Canal. And then you can see the bridge here. That is the bridge that separates the Atlantic side of the world and the Pacific side of the world, and that's just outside of Panama City. So that was a fun leg. And then once we'd gotten through the Panama Canal, we sailed across to the Galapagos, which is about a 10-day sail. And then from the Galapagos, we set sail to the South Pacific, and we sailed through the islands of the South Pacific for about 6 months before ending in Australia. So it really was a fantastic dream and a fantastic voyage for us as a family, as you can imagine. So when I set out to write this book, there was if you believe in this notion that dreams are the most powerful force on the planet, and then each of your grab bags in your life deserves its own dream. You shouldn't just have one dream, you should have multiple dreams for all of the different facets of your life. Then here's a pretty profound question. Why is it that most businesses and most people will die full of potential. And that's not supposed to be a negative thing. I mean, I know it comes across that way, but why is it that most businesses and most people will die full of potential? And by the way, the facts bear this out. If depending upon the source that you read, between 80 to 90% of new businesses and new innovations fail. And the vast majority of people on their deathbed will readily admit that they didn't live their life to its full potential as defined by them, not defined by anyone else. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to set out to understand, first of all, is there a root cause to this issue? And if there is a root cause, is there something that we could do that could radically change the outcome? And the thing which is what I lay out in the book is I think the answer is yes to both. Yes, there is a root cause, and yes, there are some things that we can do to radically change the outcome. By the way, if you have questions along the way, I know I'm going to be on a roll. So, but please, feel free to stop me, or you can just jot down the questions, and we can take them when I'm done. So,
Jeremy,
anyway,
people see the chat room for questions. So, I'd say you can get to them at the end if you want.
Okay, sounds perfect. I just don't want anyone to think that I'm ignoring them. So, all right. So what is the root cause of this? I think the root cause of this is that we're dreaming all wrong. We have a tendency to dream vaguely and dread specifically. So what you're looking at here is a picture of another family that got on a catamaran to sail around the world. And that's the thing that's in pieces on the coral in the middle of the picture here. And you can see some of the family members in the life raft at the bottom of the page. But if you have a vague dream, the more vague your dream is, be it a business, be it a project, be it a life, be it your career, whatever, be it in retirement or just starting your life, the more vague your dream is, the more you end up dreading specifically, and it paralyzes you from ever achieving the dream. So if you think about our situation of like sailing around the world, but what about your career? What about the finances? What about storms? What about the kids' education? Blah, 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 blah. All of these dreads and fears get in the way and paralyze you from ever achieving the dream. And then, of course, if you have this kind of picture in your mind of what sailing around the world, the risks of it, then, I can guarantee, and of course, this is all metaphorical, whatever that is in your life or career, then you're never going to achieve it. So I think this really gets to the root cause of why most people and most businesses are going to die full of potential. Of course, it's not that simplistic. There are many other aspects to it too. But when you boil it down to the root cause, we're dreaming all wrong. So what I would suggest to you, is that what you need to do is flip this on its head. And instead of dreaming vaguely and dreading specifically, do the opposite. Dream specifically and dread vaguely. So the more specific you can get about your dream, again, be it a product launch, be it a new business that you're starting, being like a relationship, whatever, the more specific you can be, the more you'll focus on that dream, and you'll just deal with the dreads one by one. So this is a much more compelling picture. But if I take you through our trip, just briefly, we wanted to go when the kids were old enough that they could remember it and old enough that they could help. But we also wanted them to be young, and we also wanted them to be young enough that it was still okay for them to hang out with mom and dad, right? And we didn't want to mess up, high school and girlfriends and boyfriends and all of the high school experience. So very quickly that got us down to, okay, we're going to go when Bradley is 12 and Elena is 10. Okay, well, that means that we had to set sail in 2007. So you start to get more and more and more specific about the dream, and the more specific you get, the more you just deal with the dreads one by one, and then I think you dramatically ramp up your the chances of actually achieving the dream. Doesn't have to be a sail around the world dream. It could be something a lot smaller or a lot bigger. Because remember, I'm a big component of calling all of your dreams on deck, and making them all happen. So my question to you, as you thought this was a free lunch, my question to you is, start really thinking about, regardless of where you are in your life, whether you're getting ready to retire, where you're mid-career, whether you're just starting your career, whatever, what are the dreams that you really have for your life and your career? What are they? And I would challenge you to get as specific as possible about those dreams starting tomorrow, or even today. Because again, if you buy into the idea that dreams are super powerful and we don't spend anywhere near enough time doing, thinking about them and getting intentional about them, then here's your chance. Okay. So now, of course, that's not enough. If once you've, kind of got some dreams, then there's this concept that I love, which is called the ladder of intentionality. So what is your level of intentionality behind your dream? So if you just climb up the ladder with me, this is the ladder of intentionality. So the lowest rung of intentionality of your dreams is just to think it. You think about it, and there's no accountability to yourself or to anyone else. It's a super important step because like when I was a kid, I had a dream of being a rock star. Who didn't? A race car driver or whatever. And for a couple of people that sticks, and that's fantastic. It didn't for me. It kind of came in and it went, but there were some other things that did. So this is an important step, but there's not much intentionality around it. So then you can really ramp up, and climb up the ladder of intentionality if you write it down, because then you're accountable to someone, most importantly to yourself. Right now you've written it down. We love to write things down. We love to-do lists, so that we can cross things off. So that takes your level of intentionality up a notch or up a rung on the ladder, but it's certainly not the highest point in the ladder of intentionality. I think that next step is when you declare it, and you declare it. And if it's a big dream, then you might want to declare it to first to family and friends, so that you'll get positive sort of reinforcement. But once you start declaring it, and you've all been through, annual operating plans and strat plans where you sit there and you declare it, well, all of a sudden now it's your word. So the more you declare it, the more the higher your level of intentionality. Now you've climbed up the ladder. So just like on a real ladder, it's starting to feel a little riskier because you're a little higher. That's still not the highest rung though on the ladder of intentionality. What I would submit is the highest level is when you've declared your dream or your dreams in such a way and in such a compelling way and with such specificity that you actually get others talking about it. And then something really magical happens is you start building this community of people that are trying to help lift you up to help you achieve your dream. And that's exactly what happened to us like with our sailing around the world. I happened to bump into a guy who I worked with at P&G. I bumped into him like 10 years later in a restaurant in the middle of nowhere in Mexico. And he said, I was just talking about you the other day. Did you ever sail around the world? And I'm like, yes. So you have greater accountability, but more importantly, you create an infrastructure around you kind of automatically to help lift you up and achieve those dreams. And that applies equally in your work environment as it does in your personal lives. So again, as we sort of step through this, and I'm obviously moving through this pretty quickly, but where are you today on the ladder of intentionality for your job and your career? So how intentional are you being? I hate victims of employment, oh yeah, but so how intentional are you being about where you are in your job and in your career? And if you're not where you want to be, what are you doing about it? Okay, and obviously these all goes hand in hand because it's all about life balance. Where are you on the ladder of intentionality of your life? Okay, and again, what can you start doing, as of today or tomorrow, to actually climb up the ladder of intentionality? And don't just sort of think about it, because again, that's low on the ladder of intentionality. Really start climbing up that ladder. Okay, so now you've got your specific dream. I'll focus on one, but you got a specific dream, and now you've declared that dream in such a way that you've got everybody talking about it. Well, guess what? That's still obviously not enough to make it happen. What you've got to then do, and this is something that we suck at in today's society because we like everything instantly, right? Is planning and preparing well. So before we went on our sailing trip, we took our kids when at this point they were 8 and 10, and we had them trained in navigation and in boat handling of a 43-foot catamaran, so that if my wife and I were incapacitated in some way, they would be able to handle the boat and navigate safely to the next destination. my wife took abandoned ship training. So here she is in the middle of this life raft, so that if in the event that the boat was going to go down or whatever, then how do we manage in a life raft situation? I would, pull a boat out of the water after every major ocean crossing to check all of the through holes and everything in the hull to make sure that the boat was, there weren't any issues that were going to, cause danger for the crew, my family, across the Pacific or the Atlantic, whatever, because you're literally thousands of miles away from everywhere. So you've really got to plan and prepare well. So like here, for example, I took marine diesel mechanics training so that I could take apart and rebuild our engine, in the middle of an ocean if I needed to. And it turned out that I did have a massive engine issue. And because I'd done that training, I was able to solve it. Here I'm also training my son how to manage the Gennaker, which is the big sail. And then down in the bottom corner here, we trained the whole family to scuba dive. So that we could enjoy scuba diving. So the point is, there was a heck of a lot of, and also financially, we had to plan and prepare. We had to, so we and the kids' schooling and everything like that. You plan and prepare well. And unfortunately, in today's society, everything's moving so quickly. Everything is real time. We want everything, to be an instant success, both in our personal, our financial, or our work lives. It doesn't, you can't shortcut really good planning and preparation. And here, this is Bradley doing some small boat training before we set sail. So again, you've got very specific about your dream. Now you've climbed high on the ladder of intentionality. What can you do today to plan and prepare better to actually make it happen? And this applies again to, are you starting a new business? Have you actually planned and prepared well enough? Do you understand the consumer well enough, to really understand that there's an unmet need here, and you're going to be providing the only solution to that unmet need? Try and make sure that you're not looking at this as a sailing story. Really think about it in the context of all of the grab bags in your life. Okay, none of this matters if none of this matters at all if you're not courageous. If you're not courageous. Now, one of the things that I love about it is going through all of these different phases of making dreams come true. You're actually, what I'm doing is you're building your courage muscle, right? That's the way I like to call it, because you're making a lot of kind of courageous decisions along the way, and nothing will happen if you actually don't have the courage to do a few things. And I think courage is a fantastic word. So I'll peel it apart a little bit. I'm not talking about courage on the battlefield or, in war or anything like that. I'm talking about some specific elements of courage that I think will help get you to charting the course for your life and work. So you have to have the courage to set sail. And I know that sounds simple, but it's true. So here, our boat, the name of our boat, by the way, is Hakuna Matata, which means no worries in Swahili, which is the opposite of boat ownership. But anyway, that's a separate thing. So Hakuna is very happy here, in the marina docked in the Galapagos, and you can get on her and you can go and you can walk around and, oh yeah, this is a beautiful boat and everything like that. But that's not what she was built for. That's not what your dreams were built for. Okay. So you actually have to have the courage to set sail. And then as importantly, or if not more, you have to have the courage not only to set sail, but to venture out into the unknown. Now, I've got these two pictures here because on the picture on the left, the picture on, did I just lose my video? Hang on.
Yes.
Okay, hang on. Sorry. Let's
see your shared screen though.
You've got my.
There you are. You're back.
Not sure what happened there. Sorry. So the picture on the left, we're absolutely petrified. The picture on the right, we were cool as a cucumber. And again, I'm going through this pretty quickly, but the picture on the left is when we first set out to go across the Atlantic. Okay, so it's a beautiful evening, and it was the first evening that we'd sent out. So we'd done all the preparation, we'd taken all the classes, we built the boat, we were all together, we'd sailed around the Mediterranean and everything like that. But this is the first time we're setting off for 3,200 miles across an ocean to try, to make it to the Caribbean. And so we were petrified. But we did it. We had the courage to venture out into the unknown. The picture on the right is when we left the Galapagos to sail a longer and more dangerous ocean across the Pacific to the South Pacific. And we were as cool as, it was like we were going for a day sail around Long Island Sound, because obviously we knew we could do it. And that's the beauty of it, right? I mean, so get specific about your dream, get intentional about it, do all the planning and preparation, but then you have to summon the courage to set sail and to venture out into the unknown. And then once you do it once, you do it again, and you keep building that courage muscle. Okay, so then the, okay, now why is it, I don't know why it's not, it says I'm screen sharing, but I'm going to stop share. I'm sorry, we technical issues, but it's not, oh, there we go.
There you go, you're good.
All right, so then you also have to have, once you've done that, you need to have the courage to keep going in the face of adversity. You adjust the sails, but more often than not, if you turn back to where you came from, you're putting yourself in more danger. So we were caught in on the edge of a hurricane. We had 60-foot waves for 3 days straight. It was scary as hell. The most dangerous thing that we could have done, we adjusted our course, so we ended up in a slightly different part of Australia. But this was after a couple of days after the seas had calmed down. And the waves were still really big. So, but you've got to have the courage to keep going in the face of adversity. And, anytime you're trying to take a company in a new direction, a brand in a new direction, your life in a new direction, it takes courage, and you need to have the courage to keep going in the face of adversity. Something that we suck at as adults, we thrive on this as kids, but we suck at it, is the courage to ask for help and the courage to give it unconditionally. So we ran aground in the Sandblast Islands because we came into an anchorage too late and we didn't see the coral heads that we ended up going aground on. Our kids went in. There were a couple of boats in the anchorage, and they were happy sitting there having their cocktails, whatever. And the kids said, "Can you come help us? Because we've got our boat is run aground." And we didn't get the, "No, that's not my job. No, I'm busy. I'll get back to you," whatever. They immediately dropped everything, came and helped us. And it took several hours to get us, to get us back off. But we had the courage to ask for help and the courage to give it. And they had the courage to give it unconditionally. And we didn't, we don't do that enough, I don't think. We have to have the courage to be humble. This is Leon and his wife. They're Kuna Indians that live in the Sandblast. And when he approached us, he's a fisherman, and said, like, "How long are you staying?" We didn't say, "Oh, just, we're just here, just to take a look and then we're off." Our answer was, "Look, we're here to as long as it takes for us to learn your culture." And that opened the doors to just a richness of experience in the Sandblast Islands that, these people don't have anything. And yet they invited us into their home, and cooked us a generous meal, and went on hikes together to discover parts of their land. So I think that this is I think, again, particularly challenging in today's environment. But I think we have to have the courage to be humble while we're pursuing our dreams. You've obviously got to have the courage to trust yourself and your team. If you're in a work environment, your people know when you don't trust yourself, and you send that signal pretty clearly, and then you get underperformances for the team. But more importantly, you also don't, if you look at this in the context of your dreams, if you don't have the courage to trust yourself to go and pursue those dreams, and you've done the planning and the preparation and everything like that, you're never going to achieve your full potential. Similarly, this is a picture of the four of us. So my son, we let him grow his hair the whole trip, so he looks like a girl by the end of the trip. So anyway, that's Bradley. So here we are we just crossed the Pacific, and we were celebrating that successful passage, because I couldn't have done that alone. I had to rely very much on our team. Our kids were up at 3 o'clock in the morning on watch, for 30 days. No, not 30 days. I guess 24 days, something like that. All right, you have to have the courage to be optimistic. This is the family that crashed their catamaran. I'll keep the story short. He lost his leg, almost lost his life, and his son, the largest son, the eldest son, took all of the other family members off and got them safely to shore. That was the life raft that you saw, and their objective of the trip had been to come become estranged and disconnected as a family. If you talk to the dad, and they actually wrote a book called Black Wave, he thinks that the loss of his leg was a small price to pay for the outcome of their trip, because they ended up depending upon each other. But that's like, so he couldn't control the event. What he could control was his reaction to the event, and he has the courage to be optimistic and look at it from an optimistic standpoint. A couple of others, and then I'll wrap up for questions. I think you have to have the courage to listen and accept reality quickly. In large corporations, we're awful at this, right? I mean, this is a radar that says you got 40 knots of wind that's about to happen, like imminently. And we know, those scenarios both in your personal life, there's a big storm coming and you keep putting it off, or in, like at work, like you've launched something, it's not going well, and there's a storm on the horizon or whatever. When you're out at sea in the ocean, if you don't prepare immediately, you're going to put the whole boat in peril. And so I would encourage all of you, as you're pursuing your dreams, to have the courage to listen to what's really going on and to accept reality quickly, because the quicker you accept it, the quicker you can act to either build on it or ameliorate. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but the plumbing system of a boat is notoriously awful, and it has a tendency. You see that vertical tank there? It has a tendency to block up right at the bottom of that tank, and then it fills with crap, and you have a very unhappy boat. And that's not something. And the only way, by the way, to unblock it is to take the lid off the top, roll up your sleeve, put your hand down through it all and wiggle your finger, and then suddenly it unblocks and whoosh, you have a happy boat. And the point here is sometimes you just have to get your hands dirty, and you cannot delegate that to anyone else. So, but the minute you do it, you suddenly have a happy boat. So think about all of those blockages in your life or your career or versus your dreams, and ask yourself, okay, so what is the blockage, and do I have the courage to get my hands dirty and just get, because as soon as you do it, whoosh, like everything like drains out, and all of a sudden think about that as corporate culture, for example. Like a lot of corporate cultures like build up and they get more and more and more and more toxic. Like you just put your finger down in there, wiggle it around, let it go whoosh, and then all of a sudden it's transformed. There's multiple examples of that, which we won't go into. And then of course, I think what, as importantly, you got to have the courage to really have fun. We were out in the Pacific, and in the back here, you see the little ones, and they were just having a ball. They were flipping up, and they were doing, cartwheels and stuff. Life is too damn short for us not to have fun, even in these, through the tough year that we've just lived through. We've got to make sure that we have the courage to really have fun. So, here again, another challenge for all of you. What can you do today to be more courageous, for your life? And what can you do today to be more courageous for your career? So those are some, I think, important things for you that I would challenge each and every one of you to think about, and you can go from there. So in good old P&G fashion, quick recap. So how are you going to go ahead and bring all dreams on deck and chart the course for your life and work? I'd encourage you to dream, not just dream, but dream specifically and dread vaguely, to be highly intentional, climb that ladder of intentionality, plan and prepare well, and of course, then be courageous, and you can pull it all together. And in case you want a workbook to help you through all of that, shameless plug, here's my book, All Dreams on Deck. Charting the course for your life and work. It's a very easy read, but it's got a chart plotter in the back for you to start answering a lot of the questions that I've been asking you through the course of the day. So, or the lunch. So it's available on Amazon. So I will be quiet now, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Hey, thanks so much, Jeremy. That was I knew that was going to be impressive, and again, you exceeded my expectations. So thanks so much for doing that. We've got some questions in the chat room, but I think we're the right size group that you can feel free to unmute and ask your question out loud to Jeremy. So I know, LaShawn, you had a couple questions early on. And
Yep,
you
finally hit the unmute button. Yep, I'm here. So one of the big questions that I had was, the first big question is, how do you know when your dream is specific enough? And along with that is, how do you determine if your dream is too big?
Ooh, I'm not gonna. I think you have to define on, like, I know this sounds like a cop out. I think you kind of have to define that for yourself. In terms of the specificity. I mean, I think if you can make it time bound, if you can make it, I mean, a lot of these things kind of end up being binary. It's like a lot of people say, okay, well, I want to retire early. Okay, well, I'm just using that as an example. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, so that means what age? How much money you're going to need? Where are you going to want to live? What is your plan for friends and activities when you retire? Like, so I'm just giving you like, I put as much specificity around it as possible that enables you to stay focused on that, as opposed to not just saying I want to retire early. It'll never happen, right? Because and then it's binary. You can look at what you've got in your savings account, for example, if you just take the financial aspect, and you need to be saving X because you've only got Y. So that becomes a binary decision. You're by default, you're either going to start saving more so that you can retire at 58, whatever age, which means X year, which means, okay, so what am I doing between now and then to make it happen? So I think that depends on the dream. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say no dream's too big. I think, I think what I laid out at the beginning of the of the session, like all of those different components, you're like, I mean, like Amazon, who knew, right? The internet, I mean, like those dreams may have seemed too big. Getting to Mars, so I'm going to go on record as saying I don't think any dream's too big.
Thank you.
Now I'm on mute. Al, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. First of all, very impressive, and thanks for sharing your story.
Oh, you're welcome.
So after you finished your journey, what were your key learnings, maybe as a family? And if you had to do it over again, what would you do differently?
I keep going. So, I mean, one of our big learnings really was that you had to depend upon each other. I mean, like, I think we ended up as a family, we've got such a richness of shared experience together that continues to this day. My kids are now 25 and 23, and we did this when they were 12. We set out when they were 12 and 10. I think it's really helped shape them, and it's given us a common language. Okay, well, like in a career change, my daughter was thinking about quitting her job, and she goes back to some of the experiences and challenges she had on the boat. To kind of like, she went anyway, I won't go into it, but I think it's given us a great common language. And one of the things that my wife and I are particularly excited to see is that it seems as though that's rubbed off on our kids. Like, my son works for Procter Gamble now, and they're working from home, and so he moved to, I don't know whether you heard it, he moved to Aruba to live in a container that had been turned into a house on the beach so that he could scuba dive. And it's like, a lot of people could have done that instead of just sitting in Cincinnati, but he actually did it. And so I like to think that it's shaped that. And I think it's also shaped the kind of work that I do and my approach to working with companies and what have you.
Tough life, your son.
Yeah.
But to your point, a lot of people could have done it, but didn't. So that's interesting.
Right. That's right.
Francois, you had a question. By the way, I had the same question. So if you'd like to go. And you're on mute.
Jeremy, great hearing about you since in such a long time in Caracas, but amazing what you've done. Amazing. I think that enrolling a team to achieve that dream is a challenge, but a family, that's I think a very, very big challenge. How did you do that? How do you convince them?
Well, it ended up being, first of all, I'm obviously really lucky to have the wife that I have. So I guess that was super helpful. But we just made it a fun, life project for the whole family. And like you go sail, training on how to do navigation and boat handling, in the Bahamas, with the Bahamas. What kid's going to say no to that? So the more we sort of did it, again, like I talk about building the courage muscle. I think the more I did, the more we built our kids' courage muscle. So they were also kind of young enough that they still thought dad could do most things. So I think they trusted me. But I think it wasn't just a snap decision. I mean, we worked on it. We talked about it. We involved them in the process. We involved them in the dream. What do they want to get out of it and all that sort of stuff. And I think the more they felt a part of it, the more excited they got about it. Which is, again, awesome. The same in business, right? When you enroll your team in that, like the more energized they get. So
awesome.
Jeremy, obviously, if there are other questions, people can jump in. But one thing I think would be interesting for you to talk about is sort of what was going on at this. You're at PepsiCo. You're in a pretty nice executive position, and you started. How did you start working the PepsiCo machine to get this leave? And I don't paint this too rosy, because I know it wasn't. There was a lot of people who said, "Great, go for it," but it wasn't all better roses. So I think it would be good to share some of that, so that people also get a feel for, just because you have the dream doesn't mean everybody's going to be on board with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, once we had, as a family, decided that we wanted to do it in 2002, 2007, 2008, we made that decision a few years earlier. We actually tried to prepare ourselves financially such that if the company said no, that we were going to be okay. So that was part of the planning and the preparation to say, okay, well, you know what, if we're going to do it, we'd love to do it and not have to quit PepsiCo. But if we're going to, but we're going to do it anyway. So that was an important, that gets to the specificity of it. It's like, okay, we're either going to do it or we're not. So then a lot of people think that I should have do sales training or something like that. Because then I convinced, at the time, Steve Reineman and then Indra Nooyi, the CEOs of Pepsi, that I would actually be a better senior leader for the company after having this experience. Because I think most senior executives are you've been working in an office all your life. Okay, I think courage is something that's really lacking in a lot of senior leadership at companies. I think creativity. I think so I put together a sabbatical plan now, and they said great, and so we had now I forego that's the wrong verb tense. I didn't get a promotion. When I leading up to going that I was in line for. And I think that was the right thing for a company standpoint. And I was prepared to not get that promotion because it didn't make sense for me to be leading a $3 billion business when I knew that I was going to be out in 6 months. So there were things like that. I had to give up my stock options for Sarbanes-Oxley rules, and yet we had prepared for that. So, and they said, call us when you get to the South Pacific and we'll figure out where you're going to go next. And I just had to have some faith and trust that was going to be okay. And I called them from the South Pacific and they said, we want you to be the chief marketing officer of the international foods business for PepsiCo, and based out of New York. And so, it ended up working great. And I actually think I took a lot of these learnings and then shared them around the world. In that capacity, I was able to travel to multiple countries and teach them about courage and try and get them to start dreaming bigger about their businesses and their lives. So.
Very good. And what about, so did you feel like, having been out of the company for a pretty long time, did you feel like you missed out, or did you were you ever really able to get back into the swing of things?
Yeah, I think so. I ended up being in. It came back in a very senior role. It took a while to readjust. I won't pretend that And again, I don't want anyone who's been listening to think about this. Okay, well, this is it's about sailing. It's about whatever your dream is, right? So yeah, I'll be honest. I struggled at that for a while, and then I was promoted a couple of times when I came back, but I was kind of bored, to be honest. even though I was in a very, as in a very senior position at the company. And so I took another kind of gamble, and I went to go turn around as CEO of a lighting technology company that needed a massive turnaround. That was private equity backed, and that was something completely out of my comfort zone and setting sail across a different ocean. But I think that then prepped me for success with a couple of the companies that I started since then. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
So what's your next dream?
Carlos, if you don't mind, I have a question.
Please go ahead, Stephanie.
So you've referred to a few times to the building the courage muscles, and I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on how to do that. As you know, I'm working on this entrepreneurial venture, and there's constant hoops, to jump through, and different challenges, and exciting things, and then disappointing things, and just how do you build that muscle and keep that courage?
Well, I think it's a little bit like, I know continuing to use the same analogy. It's like if you haven't exercised for a long time, and then you suddenly go to the gym and you try and bench 400 pounds or something like that, you're going to rip the muscles out of your chest. Well, looks like maybe LaShawn would be okay with that, but most of us not. You're just gonna you're gonna destroy yourself. And I think that's an action that too many people try and take, especially if they're trying to start their own business. Like, they all of a sudden think that everything should be going smoothly and everything like that, when most overnight successes in business took 10 years to build, and that's ups and downs. And it's doing the work, and as you're doing as you're making the quote unquote smaller decisions, and you're making a little, you're selling a little, you're learning a lot, you're failing, you're trying again, then all of that is building your courage muscles, such that when the big launch happens, or someone tries to buy you, or you're doing an IPO,
right,
or whatever, you're actually much better prepared to say, okay, let's go.
Right. Yeah. It just basically happens over time, and
you
stick with it. You don't even realize it, but you're getting stronger.
Just like an exercise routine, right? It's so it doesn't make any sense to try it for a week or to try it for a couple of weeks. You got to stick with it, and then you'll see the long-term benefits. And that's, our planning for this trip was not something that we did in a few weeks. We did it for a few years. And I think that was, and that's what I try to impart with the companies that I work with, and the organizations that I work with, to try and get them in a better place.
Right. And what about, you talked about some of the benefits that you noticed afterward. And, you gave the example of how your son is, taking on these, making his dreams happen, and how it's affected your whole family in a positive way. But I'm kind of curious, what was it about sailing around the world that motivated you the most? What when you set out on it in the first place, what was
it started, I think it started off, that particular dream, I think, started off as a romantic kind of adventure dream, and then we were like, okay, well, why not? Okay, and then it kind of okay, so we were very much on the low rung of the ladder of intentionality, just kind of batting it around. I will say, and this is a little bit, it's related, but it's a little bit off topic. So my wife and I do this every 10 years. We go to separate rooms, we have a bottle of red wine each, and we start writing down our what do we want to achieve in the next 10 years, recognizing that we're not guaranteed those 10 years. And then we have to separately still prioritize it. What are the top 5, my top 5, her top 5, and then we get together and then we talk about it. And then back then, one of my top 5 was to sail around the world, and one of my wife's top 5 was to travel around the world. So we said, okay, well, let's put that together and then make that part of our life plan together. And I think what I hope, and I hope it will continue, you never knock on wood, she still seems happy. So we we still do this every 10 years, despite the fact that we've been married for almost 30 years, because we want to make sure that we're being intentional about what it is that we're trying to do together. And not just drifting apart and her doing one thing and me doing another. We want, and there are going to be things that she does that I'm not interested in, and vice versa. But we feel like it's important that there are at least a couple of those things that we're doing together. And so back then, that's how this started.
Okay, interesting.
Great. What's your next dream, Jeremy?
What's that?
Yeah,
Our next stream, we're gonna do a well, again, I've got more than one. So one is, my wife, Pat, and I have been doing a lot to help the citizens of Cuba, and we've been doing that through the installation of water purification systems throughout the country, and that's been a lot more difficult given some recent declarations against the island. But again, trying to get out of, not be linked to it politically. We've now been able to install over 35 water purification systems, which is transforming the health and welfare for people, especially in rural Cuba. And so we got many more of those to install. So we want to get to 50 by the end of 22. So that's one part. That's the kind of like on the philanthropy side, and then on the sailing side, we're going to do a big loop of the Gulf of Mexico, in the Gulf of Mexico.
Fantastic.
And now, while running some businesses.
Oh yeah, side jobs.
Yeah. And I suppose somewhere in there in the next 5 years is retire. So, and I haven't been specific enough. I haven't been specific enough about that one, and my wife will agree that I've not been specific about that enough about that one. So
that's great. Well, Jeremy, I want to thank you again on behalf of me personally and on behalf of the P&G alum for a fantastic hour. Just really, really compelling. I have read your book, as you know, and thoroughly enjoyed it. So thanks again.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. I just wanted to add to that. And also, I think some people were asking if there's a recording that'll be available. It will be available, and we will send that link out maybe in a day or two. And thank you again, Jeremy. That was awesome. Really enjoyed it. Really love your story and your book. Thank you for sharing with us and joining.
Thanks very
Thank
much,
you, Carlos,
everybody,
for
and
getting
have a great-
Jeremy
have a
and
great summer,
hosting
okay?
us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Thanks so much for coming.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.